Good evening, fellow feedbackers and guests, honored guests, absolutely. My name is James Wantz, and I, as Michael said, happened to win the District 7 evaluation contest this last year. Also managed to pull it off one time before. As I was putting this presentation together, I became rather nervous because although I have spent much time talking about pathways, I haven't spent as much time talking about evaluations. So this is the first of two planned educational sessions in Feedbackers. The next will be next month. This month, we are focusing on the top-down approach. This is, how should we say, the top-down approach to effective evaluation. Next month will be a deeper dive into specific techniques. Now, not only is this an educational session for you, it's actually an educational session for me too, because I'm doing the visionary communication path right now. And I decided to do that because I discovered that I lack a vision for the big picture. I'm a details guy. That's what I do for work. I do structural steel detailing for welding shops, but I'm not a big picture guy. So this presentation is my attempt to grab the big picture and look down from above. So here we go. This is the hope, the joy, the movement forward, effective evaluation techniques. What is an effective evaluation technique? Well, let's start with a little bit of a story. I was at the Portland Art Museum several years back, and I saw this very intriguing work of art. I saw so much detail in the individual pieces. I got in there and looked at each one of them to figure out how they fit together. There was such variation in each one of them. And then I took a step backwards. I began to notice pieces that I hadn't seen before, the tonal variations, the structural differences, the color. This is much like the creation of a speech. The parts all work together to illuminate the speaker's main point. It wasn't until I got far enough away from this actual piece that I began to see the big picture. So I ask again, what is an effective evaluation? Well, I believe that an effective evaluation examines all parts of a speech with an eye for what is the most effective in helping the speaker get their point across. Now, as I see it, my job is not to change the larger picture, the overall idea of a speech, but to help the speaker adjust their focus and delivery so that their theme, their message is clear to the entire audience. Now, I must admit, I didn't always do this. My very first area contest where I went in to do an evaluation, after the target speaker got up and spoke, I stood up to do my evaluation thinking I was all that. I started my evaluation with, I don't think you were prepared to give this speech tonight. I think you pulled it out of your back pocket and didn't bother to rehearse it at all. You could have actually done much better by rehearsing your speech and not just deciding at the last minute you were going to give one. Yeah, it didn't get much better after that. I thought it made perfect sense. These were the types of evaluations that I did in my club. Well, it didn't go so well. Every speech, as I see it, is a work of art, but not every artwork is shared with other people. Ask any artist how many of their works actually see the light of day. Because many of them were times where they were developing a new technique, a new brush style, trying out a new medium for that matter. This is what we do within Toastmasters. We help in the creation of a larger picture by helping improve the underlying techniques. Evaluators let the artists know what works. In fact, we become their workshop. Tonight's topics are these three items: what the speaker wants, what the speaker hears, and how to inspire both of them. These are the three areas that we will be covering. One second while I get this thing repositioned. Oh, okay. And like I said, with technology, I just lost my presentation. So 1 second, please. Well, I refined it. Of course, you were all looking at it. First topic, what the speaker wants. Simply, the speaker wants to be heard. If the speaker didn't want to be heard, they wouldn't necessarily be speaking in front of other people. They'd be speaking to themselves or singing in the shower, most likely. That's where I don't want to be heard. But speakers have different motivations for being heard. Sometimes it's recognition. Sometimes it is a project completion or respect. Maybe they simply want to practice for another presentation they're doing somewhere else. Or it's their icebreaker and they simply want to get over it. Maybe they just want to face their fears. Whatever their motivation, they still want to be heard. So how do you, as an evaluator, let the speaker know that you've heard them? These are the three areas I suggest you focus on. Firstly, and most importantly, be empathetic. No one likes a jerk, believe me. Nobody appreciated the evaluation I gave at that contest except me. And quickly thereafter, it was pointed out how terrible I'd actually done. So before you evaluate, consider these questions. Is this their icebreaker? Is this the first time that they are giving a presentation to your club?
Okay,
not necessarily the icebreaker.
Thank you.
Sorry, John, you're not muted right now. Thank you. Did they tell you that they were nervous before their speech? Now, in their place, what would you like to hear? So I suggest you start with a very big smile and tell them what they did well by being very nice. Number two, if the speaker asked for targeted feedback, make sure to include it. For example, you could get up in front of the audience and say, now before the speech, Lisa asked me to watch her eye contact. And then you can go on to talk about that. Or when I asked Malik if there was some area that he wanted me to focus on specifically, he asked about his audience interaction. Find out what the speaker wants from the presentation and then give it to them. Thirdly, be future focused. Means that the feedback that I'm going to give to any speaker is going to focus on how they can improve in the future and not what they did wrong in the past. I recently found a study that hit this one on the head. The name of the study is The Future of Feedback, Motivating Performance Improvements Through Future-Focused Feedback. Now, that's a lot of fricatives right there. Future-focused feedback. Essentially, the study went on to say in many pages that when you tell somebody an evaluation with how they can do better in the future, they are more likely to hear exactly what you were saying as opposed to telling them what they did bad in the past. Because most people's views of the past seem to think that the past is already done, it's over, there was no way I could have done this any better because the dog had to go to the vet, the cat vomited on my suit, I had to work over, etc. But if you focus towards the future with a suggestion for how they can perform better, people are more likely to set it in their mind, yeah, I could do that. I could arrange things a little bit better. I could change this, move this around. So future-focused feedback is about how they can take the speech to the next level the next time they give it. The second topic, what the audience hears. I am here to remind you that the room most definitely has ears. Everybody there is listening to you. Not only are they watching you, but they are listening to you. The speaker is clearly listening to you for information about their speech, but the audience is also listening. Don't forget that they are there. And evaluators, just like speakers, need to keep that audience in mind. What do they sound like to the other members of the room? Well, these are the three areas that I suggest you keep focus on when you think about this. Effective communicators communicate with the audience. The effective evaluators also do the same thing. The audience, not only the speaker, hears that evaluation. So, how can you do these? Be informative. Give the speech objectives. Because the speaker knows them well, you probably know them well from reading the objective sheet in front of you, but the audience may not remember what the focus of the speech was. or give some special aspect about the speech, something that you are informing the audience about. For example, this is the second time that they're doing the speech because they've done it once, they're receiving some feedback and offering the same speech back again. Or is this perchance a more advanced project from one of the higher levels in Pathways, like writing a blog, so you could explain a little bit about the project before you do your evaluation. Now that leads into the explanative part. That's point number 2, which is different, similar but different than being informative. By explanative, I mean that point out good techniques that they used. For example, alliteration, like those 3 F's earlier, future-focused feedback. That's something that sticks in the mind. So point out their use of alliteration. Maybe they had really effective pauses, or their humor came across incredibly well. You can also, while you're being explanative, suggest techniques for them to use in a future speech. For example, maybe they needed a better call to action at the end of their speech, or the research that they mentioned wasn't cited and you'd like them to let us know where they got it from. Or maybe they simply just need a better concluding statement. Now, number 3 in this list is be inclusive. Involve the audience in your presentation as an evaluator. If the speaker is concerned about appearing nervous, this is where you can involve the audience. Or, for that matter, if the speaker asks about their connection with the audience, or if they're being humorous, throw it out as a question to the audience. So, John asked me if he would connect really well to the audience. How well do you think John connected with you during the speech? Was Frank's speech funny? Did you think that Pilar looked at all nervous in her presentation? No, she didn't. She had it down, absolutely, completely down. Those are ways you can be inclusive and include the audience in your evaluation by bouncing questions off of them. Now, this is also where I've used, how should we say, questions where I don't necessarily know the answer, where I want to get their feedback, where I have one opinion and I'm thinking, do I share the same opinion as them? So I throw it out to the audience. How effective did you find that conclusion? Did it grab you? Did it motivate you? Did it want you to go and do something? And then you can check around the room, maybe a hand sign or something. That way you get information about your evaluation and what you heard, but the speaker gets additional information from the members of the audience. So the third is how to inspire both. Well, obviously it's cats. I mean, you got to talk about cats somewhere because that is the inspiration for everything in the universe. Okay, maybe not for everybody. Sorry, Tamsin. How to include everybody? Make your evaluation universal, fun, and positive. Positive, universal, and fun. To mix them up. Start with a smile. Absolutely start with a smile, especially on Zoom, because you don't know who has you pinned before you even start speaking. But I encourage you at the beginning of your evaluation, and often throughout the middle of it, employ a smile. Not only does it make me look better, but it might soften the edge just a smidge. When you make the evaluation universal, you look for those places to insert the humor and to have fun with the whole thing. I suggest inserting a little bit of humor into the first couple lines of your evaluation. That's a great place to have a self-deprecating joke or a take on something they said, or to point out a really good example that you flubbed in the past. Something along those lines. The intro, the first couple lines of your evaluation is a great place for some humor to go in there, because you usually have some time to think about an entry line where you can insert the humor and get everybody on board with you. Put your suggestions in a very positive term. And by positive term, I mean avoid the negative ones. Avoid the words like critical, bad, fail, poor, and the like. Because I've often found that when I get up and give an evaluation, as soon as I use a critical word, I can see the speaker becoming defensive or becoming hurt, or it's I do it the same. I myself do the same thing. When an evaluator gives me a negative evaluation as I see it, I tend to want to shut down, or I immediately want to reply and say, no, that's not what I did. That's not what I said. I become very defensive. By focusing your evaluation on completely positive attributes and how they can improve it in the future, you bypass the defensive tendency and you're able to help them take the speech to an entirely new level in the beginning. Now, this presentation timer on my computer has been running since I started the meeting, and it is definitely past the time that I was supposed to be over, although I suspect that I'm not quite at that point. I do have to say that there was this one particular time I got up and gave an evaluation, and I was speaking to the speaker, explaining things in a universal way with positive terms to the entire audience. And when I completed the evaluation, I had a member of the audience give me a little slip of paper. Once I opened that and read it, they said, thank you. You gave me some ideas for how to complete this project on my own. I'd been stumped and had no idea how to go forward. It's very important to remember the other people in the room, because just as much as that positive evaluation, there have been a few situations where I had a speaker come up to me before their speech and let me know that they wanted hard-hitting critical feedback because this speech was for a contest and they wanted to make sure they got it right. So I gave them exactly what they were looking for. I gave them the critical feedback. I told them what parts didn't work, how they could craft it, how they could move it forward. And then I found out later that there were two members of the audience that never came back to the club, because when our vice president of membership reached out to them, they said that they couldn't take that type of evaluation, and they really didn't think the club was a good fit for them. So please remember, you're not the only one there, and there are more people listening to you than you can possibly imagine. These were the topics we covered. The speaker wants to be heard. The audience hears you, and inspire both with positivity. Part 2 will be next month. The topics we will cover is delving into the details, how to evaluate right here on Zoom, when to evaluate a speaker's content or the idea behind the speech, and what to evaluate if you're lost or you get a really good speaker.